Ferdinand Tutorials. This video is mainly for those who are studying biology in the university, those who are studying biology in the secondary school, or those who are studying biology just for fun. So this course is for everyone, not just for some individuals. So today we want to talk about living organisms. Living organism. Now, if you look at that word, there are two different words that form it. There are two simpler words that join to form that complex word, living organism. So that means there is living and there is what? Organism. Let's downscale it one after the other. Now we're talking about organism. Now organisms are organic living systems that exist as what? Individual entities. Now organisms are made up of what? Cells. They don't just form on their own. Organisms are made up of what? Cells. That's when we are talking about the levels of organization of life, when we have the cell level, when we have the tissue level, we have the organ level, we have the system level, and then we have the what? Organism, which is the final. So that is to tell you that in each of this level of organization of life, there is what we call what? Organism, which is the final state. So having known that an organism, what does it mean to be living? And when we're talking about living, living simply means being alive. Simply means what? Being alive. So when you are alive, then you are what? Living. Okay, what then is living organism? Now from our book here, we said living organism pertains to any organism or a life form that possesses or show the characteristics of life or being alive. So if you don't show the characteristics of life or you don't show the characteristics of being alive, then you are not a what? A living organism. Are you getting it? So you must show these characteristics of life or characteristics of being alive before we can now term you as what? A living organism. Now the origin of life is what we call abiogenesis. Abiogenesis goes forward to explain that life started existing from non-living matters, or we can say non-living things. So that means living organism today started from non-living. That's what abiogenesis goes forward to explain. But that jinx hasn't been explained clearly by scientists because it's still a puzzle. Are you getting it? Me, I'm finding it difficult to believe, but if it is being proven otherwise, this is what it is. We just have to understand that living organisms started from what? Non-living matters. Are you getting it? That's what the theory of abiogenesis explains. So that is it. Now let's move over to the classification of living organisms. Now there are three classifications of living organisms. Now we have the Eubacteria, which is the true bacteria. We have the Archaea, which is the Aqua Bacteria. And we have the eukarya, which is the what? Eukaryotes. Now we take them one after the other. Now when we talk about Eubacteria, which is the true bacteria, now these are prokaryotic organisms. When we mean prokaryotic organism, we mean that they lack membrane-bound organelles. That is, they can either be gram-positive or they can either be what? Gram-negative. When we are talking about the Eubacteria, which is the true bacteria. Now, generally we believe that bacteria are usually negative, like they harm us very well. That's the normal thinking that we believe. That's how we think about bacteria. But I want us to change that today. Bacteria doesn't just affect us negatively. Bacteria affect us positively too. That means we can use bacteria for agricultural purposes, for economic purposes, or for medicinal what purposes. I'm talking about that true bacteria, which is the Eubacteria. Eubacteria. Are you getting it? Now let's talk about some of the examples. Now examples where we're talking about the lactobacillus. Lactobacillus. We're talking about E. coli, which is Escherichia. The idea is what? Escherichia. So E. coli. We have the Staphylococcus. So these are the examples of the what? Of the Eubacteria. Eubacteria. That's true bacteria. Now let's go back to the second classification, which is the Archaea. We call it normally what? Archaeobacteria. Now Archaeobacteria are unicellular what? Microorganisms that live in an extreme environmental condition. Now these Archaeobacteria are grouped into three. Now we have the methanogens, we have the halophiles, and we have the what? The thermophiles. Now when we're talking about the methanogens, methanogens are Archaeobacteria, or we say they are microorganisms that produces what? Methane gas. Example are the Methanococcus. These are examples of what? Of methanogens. Now the second one, there we have the halophiles. And when we're talking about halophiles, halophiles are microorganisms that survive in an extreme environment with high salt concentration. That's where halophiles exist. We also have example of fishes, which is the what? The Halococcus. Now the last one there, which is the thermophiles. Now they are microorganisms that survive or thrive in an extreme high temperature. Now, high temperature is not just 100 degrees Celsius, that's the boiling point of water, or 78 degrees Celsius, the boiling point of ethanol. No, we're talking about high temperature, extreme high temperature, like 350, 400, 500. Are you getting it? These are high temperature. So these microorganisms thrive in that kind of environment. And imagine you and I being exposed to that kind of environment. We are dead already. Our skin will peel off. In fact, my friend will no longer identify me. That is to tell you how serious this is. So, but there are microorganisms that survive in such environmental conditions. That's the one we call what? The thermophiles. Now, the last but not the least in the classification is what we call the eukarya, or we call it the eukaryotes. So, eukaryotes are unicellular or multicellular organisms. Now, they are not just unicellular, they are both what? Unicellular and multicellular organisms that have membrane-bound organelles. Unlike the true bacteria that doesn't have membrane-bound organelles, eukaryotes now have what? Membrane-bound organelles. Now, they include what? Plants, they include animals, they include fungi. So, that is to tell you that whenever we are talking about eukaryotic, we are talking about organisms with what? Membrane-bound organelles. So, that is it about the eukaryotes now. So, let's talk about the characteristics of living organisms. There are 8 characteristics of living organism. 8. Now we list them. We have M, R, N, I, G, E, R, and D. We call it Mr. Niger D. Have it at the back of your mind. Mr. Niger D. M stands for movement. R stands for respiration. N stands for nutrition. I stands for irritability. G stands for growth. E stands for excretion. R stands for reproduction, and D stands for what? Death. Now, let's take them one after the other. When we are talking about movement as the characteristics of living organism, it simply means that all organism moves. Now, this movement might not be from one place to another, but they move. Now, if you look at plants, for instance, plants doesn't move from one place to another, but the part of it what does move with respond to what? External conditions. You haven't heard about that. There is difference between movement and locomotion. And locomotion is talking about moving from one place to another, not in a particular axis, moving from one place to another. So, but here when we're talking about movement, movement is revolving around a particular axis, talking about movement of the parts of the body, movement of your legs, movement of your hand, movement of your parts. Are you getting it? Allowing them to change in state. That's movement. For you to be flexible with your body part, as I'm doing now, I'm moving. I'm not going to a particular place. I'm changing the structure. I'm changing my state. Are you getting it? It's movement. But when I go from here to the next point, I'm locomoting. That's locomotion. So locomotion is only found in animals, not plants. But plants does what? Does move. They don't go from one place to another. They does it around a fixed point with response to external stimuli. So that is it. Now the second one there is respiration. Now respiration involves the what? A exchange of gases. Plants respire. Animals respire. Animals use their lungs for respiration, whereby plants use the what? The stomata and lenticels for what? For respiration. So all living organisms what? Respire. So that means if you don't respire, you are not a living organism. The next one there is nutrition. Nutrition involves what? The intake of food, ingestion of food. We don't just stay in the body, but it helps in body what? Metabolism. That's what nutrition. So if you don't eat, you are not a what? A living organism. Not just taking in this food, but helps in what? Body development through what? Metabolism. So the next one there is irritability. Now when we're talking about irritability is talking about response to external stimuli. Are you getting it? So not just the touch, but the sound. Are you getting it? Plant respond. Yeah, if you know a plant called mimosa plant, and immediately you touch the plant, it folds itself together. It is responding to what? To touch. So plants does what? Does respond to external stimuli. Next one there is growth. All plants grow, all animals grow. So if from year to year you don't grow, then you are not a what? A living organism. So as you are seeing me now, this is 2022. In the next 2 years, I will no longer remain the same. By then, I would have beards, I would have big head, or just name it. I would have increased in height. Are you getting it? That's growth. I don't know if you are getting it. So that is that. Now the next one there is excretion. Now excretion simply means the removal of waste from the body. Excretion is not just for me to excrete my feces. That's not excretion. When we're talking about the skin, I'm excreting sweat. It's excretion. So there are many other organs for excretion, where we have the kidney, we have the liver. These are organs for what? For excretion. Now let's talk about the next one there, which is what? Reproduction. Now reproduction simply means producing same individuals. So plants produce, plants reproduce, animals reproduce. So understand that there are two types of reproduction: sexual and asexual reproduction. So you and me, we does what we call sexual reproduction because there is what sex organ, there is sex cell. So fusion of the male and female sex cell to produce new organism is what we call what reproduction. So sometimes this reproduction doesn't happen in animal, it happens in plants. Are you getting it? It is not all about the fusion of the male and female garment. Some plants do sexual reproduction while some doesn't. Are you getting it? So but for unicellular organism, there is what we call what asexual reproduction. So that is it. Now let's go back to the last one, which is death. So all living organisms must die. So as you see me here, one day I too will die, one day you too will die. It's not a cause, but that is it. It is the complete characteristics. So these are the 8 characteristics of living organisms: Mr. Niger D, movement, respiration, nutrition, heritability, growth, excretion, reproduction, and death. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you got something. I hope you've understood some of the things I taught in this video. Remember how we started living organism, we have living, we have organism. Remember how we talked about abiogenesis. Remember how we classified living organism into 3, where we have the eubacteria, that's the true bacteria. We have the archaea or Aqua Bacteria, and we have the eukarya or eukaryotes. And then we mentioned the characteristics of these living organisms, where we have Mr. Niger D. So thank you for watching this video. I respect all of you. See you again in my next video. Have a nice day.